Hi everyone, good morning. It's Michelle. Welcome back. If you are new here due to just the title of this video, thanks for stopping by. I encourage you to hang around, check out my channel. I do lifestyle blog type videos, day in the life, cooking, grocery hauls, a little bit of decorating. But the difference between me and a lot of the other channels out there that do the exact same thing is I'm one of the old girls on the block. Most of those lifestyle type channels are run by the 30-year-old crowd. Well, I'm 50. So that's what makes me a little different. So if you're older like me, I encourage you to hang around, hit the subscribe button, watch some of my old videos, and welcome to my little YouTube family. So anyway, let's get started on what I wanted to talk about today. Yeah, this is a touchy, graphic subject, but I know I'm not the only person to have had to suffer with this condition my whole life. Again, I've told you I'm 50. I did not have a cut and dry diagnosis of PCOS until I was 35. But at that point, the doctors knew I was probably suffering from it for a good 20 years prior. So what is PCOS? Well, very simply put, PCOS, or they call it PCOS, stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. There is no known real cause for it, and there's also no cure for it. It has been a living hell for me dealing with it. In fact, this last and hopefully final surgery that I've gone through, my specialist actually got my written permission to write about my case to submit to the American Medical Association, because the last surgery had to deal with what is called Ovarian Remnant syndrome, and there's still doctors in the community here in the United States that don't agree that that is a thing. They deny that it exists. They said it is untrue. And this last surgeon specializes in ovarian remnant syndrome and gets women from all over the country that come to Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is where I'm treated, to have this taken care of. So hopefully, knock on wood, I have finished the journey as far as pain, surgeries, and removal of everything. I'm now pretty much just hollow inside. So I'll start from the beginning. I apologize. This is going to be graphic and a lot of information, but that's what us women go through. So if you're a man, you might not want to sit through this video, or maybe you do because you have a wife or a daughter that struggles with this. So it's, again, I think the reason a lot of this is denied in the medical community is because there's a lot of men out there that just don't believe this is a thing. So anyway, I first got my period when I was 12. A period for any girl, no matter when it starts, is usually not regular for at least a year. You know, your hormones are changing, and things are just a mess down there. It really is, literally is a mess down there. But so I never had a regular period from the time I started. But by the time I was, like I said, I started my first period at 12. By the time I hit about age 14, my periods were brutal, just absolutely brutal. They would last for 14 days on average, 2 solid weeks. And during that 2 weeks time, the bleeding was horrendous, just horrendous. never could I wear a tampon. Back then, again, I'm 50, so you're talking back in the early 80s. The tampons weren't these super plus things that you have now. That just didn't exist. So tampons were never an option for me. I would soak through a pad in less than an hour, and I'm talking the big, thick mattress size maxi pads. I mean, I would soak them in an hour. I would bleed for 2 solid weeks, and then I would only stop bleeding for 2 more weeks, and it would start again. Growing up as a teenager, dealing with that was definitely difficult. Again, because I could not do the tampon thing, swimming over the summer was sporadic. Menstrual cramps were horrible. I remember days, some days, and this didn't happen every time, but I remember days where the pain was that bad that I would lay on my bed in the fetal position and just cry. Pain meds, hot water bottles, just anything to try to give me some relief. And most of the time it didn't work. It just didn't work. So that was how I suffered my whole teenage years. So I started, finally, my parents agreed to let me go on the pill. I didn't have parents that were open-minded. I did come from a very conservative Christian household that didn't believe in sex before marriage, and so there was no option of being put on the pill to help me regulate this. At this point, I still hadn't had a diagnosis of anything. I was just a girl that was stuck with heavy periods. So finally, I started dating my current husband, then boyfriend, at age 14, and still was dealing with this. Finally, when I was graduating from high school at age 17, I just started going to the gynecologist on my own. So I was put on the pill then, you know. I got a full-time job, I got my own insurance, I was put on the pill. It helped. It helped. Being put on the birth control pill definitely helped to regulate things and lighten things up a bit. I would still bleed for a good 7 days to 10 days, but the flow was definitely getting a bit lighter, finally. And then I started developing pains, just pains that weren't menstrual cramps, the pains that I was experiencing when I was not on my period, more dead center and not off to the side, so it wasn't the ovaries. So a year before I got married, my gynecologist discovered what she called a small polyp in my cervix. It was like the size of the end of a thumb. So it wasn't anything big. She said chances are this could be causing some of my discomfort, but it wasn't big enough to go in and fool with yet. So we let it go. So then I got married when I was 19. May of 1989, right before I got married, that I was in for a routine exam. Again, still experiencing this pain, and that polyp that was the size of a thumb had grown into the size of a softball. It was in the cervix, but like half sticking out of the cervix, half embedded in the cervix. So the week I got home from my honeymoon, I was in for my first surgery to remove this. So it actually had to be cut out of the cervix. At that point, they diagnosed it as a fibroid tumor. Again, still having nothing to do with the polycystic ovarian syndrome, but just the start of my nightmares. So first big fibroid was removed. Now, if you research fibroid tumors, you will see that when you get your first fibroid, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be your only one. You're going to continue to get them. So Still no diagnosis of anything official, still stayed on the pill. Then Mike and I decided we wanted to have a baby. With PCOS, it can be very difficult. Obviously, I went off the pill to try to have a baby. We tried for a year. Finally, we're able to have our first child. At that point, I was 22, just 2 months shy of my 23rd birthday. I gave birth to big fat baby Caitlin, who came in at 8 pounds 10 ounces. Again, no real problems with anything regarding the labor and delivery. I did develop hypertension during my pregnancy with her, and the last month was put on bed rest. But that's common. You know, I don't blame that on anything to do with the PCOS or any other matters down there. I didn't go back on the pill. I figured, it took me a year to get pregnant with the first one, and we wanted more children. I actually wanted 6 kids at one point. I was an only child, can you tell? That's why I wanted 6 kids. So, didn't go back on the pill right away. Could not breastfeed with Caitlin. I tried. I have breasts that are full of cysts. The fibrocystitis is in both breasts, and the strain of the breastfeeding caused bleeding. So I ended up with blood in the breast milk and almost killed my baby. We noticed after I got home and my milk finally came in and I was breastfeeding her, I took home from the hospital. Milk finally came in and I was trying to breastfeed her, that there was like orange diarrhea running out of this child. So we immediately obviously got medical attention, and this is what it was. So had to switch to formula right away. She was fine, no harm to her. Me, no breastfeeding. So I didn't have the benefits of the breastfeeding, which normally in a normal person, you don't get pregnant while you're breastfeeding. So formula right away, still never went on birth control. Periods were still somewhat okay when they finally came back after giving birth. But when Caitlin was 5 months old, I found out I was pregnant a second time. So then 9 months after that, in October of '93, I gave birth to my 8 pound 1/4 ounce second baby, Victoria. We call her Tia. Won't go into a lot of reasons why we stopped at 2 children, but let's just say that second child, from what I hear from a lot of women, puts a damper on any more kids, because sometimes those second children just try you. We love her to death, but she was a difficult baby. So we decided after that, no more kids. Not right away. Not right away. So I did go back finally on birth control after I gave birth to her, and stayed on it for a while. At that point, when I gave birth to her, it was right before I was turning 24. So for the next 10 years, I dealt with the bad periods again. I would develop another fibroid that they would discover. I would go in and have it removed. At that point, we would catch them quick enough that no cutting was usually involved. I would go in for the DNC. The DNC, which is the dilation and curettage, where they go in and they scrape. Then we had tried, I wanted a hysterectomy. Again, still we did not know that PCOS was a thing. PCOS was not a quick diagnosis back then like it is now. I wasn't seeing a doctor for regular physicals, so I didn't have any idea that my blood pressure was up, my cholesterol was up. I weighed less than what I do now, but I was never skinny. The only time I was skinny was from the time I was born, because I was a preemie, until about right before hitting puberty. I was skinny as heck. Like, my mom would say that I looked like, she used to call me back then, my dad's a Vietnam vet, was a Vietnam vet, and she would say I looked like a Vietnamese refugee. Like, I was so skinny. Dark circles under the eyes, just pencil low legs. Anyway, once puberty hit and all those hormones started raging, I was no longer the skinny girl. Again, not very overweight, but that's when the weight started coming on. So, again, now I have 2 kids and I'm getting fibroids back. They're being removed. I want a hysterectomy. I want this gone. I want something done. Well, insurance companies pretty much rule everything that you do. So no insurance company was going to pay to have any parts taken out until I tried everything imaginable out there. So my gynecologist at the time suggested the uterine balloon ablation, where they stick what looks like a balloon in your uterus, fill it with scalding water, which destroys the lining of the uterus, and then they deflate it, pull it out, you're left to heal, and that normally helps because, again, that lining of the uterus is destroyed. So we did that. I also tried in between there the Depo-Provera shots, which is where they stick this shot in one of your butt cheeks every, I can't remember how often it was now, every 3 months maybe. It's been so long. But every time I would get a shot, I was gaining 8 to 10 pounds. Way too controversial. I don't even know if they still do those. But again, it was another attempt to try to regulate these horrendous periods because the insurance company was not willing to do anything for me. So, and to pay for a hysterectomy out of pocket it wasn't an option for us. It still wasn't an option. Don't need it anymore. But anyway, so we had done the shots, we had done the pills, we did the ablation. The ablation worked. The ablation actually worked, and my periods when I got them were super light. They would last maybe 3 days. Every once in a while I would have a freak one that would last about 5 days. And this worked for about 10 years. When I turned 35, I remember vividly, I was at an AT&T store getting a new phone. I had just gotten off work. I'm dressed up, skirt, you know, looked nice, met Mike there after work. And we were, at that time you actually sat in a chair to talk to somebody to buy a phone. I don't even think they let you sit anymore. But again, you're talking 15 plus years ago. I felt it return. And when it returned, it was like somebody stuck a knife in me. I sat in that AT&T store and I hemorrhaged, like hemorrhaged. You couldn't get me out of there fast enough. And it wasn't like I was, when I say hemorrhaged, I could just feel the stuff running out of me. I stood up, the back of my skirt had a spot like this. We got me home and cleaned up, and I called the doctor. I said, and I had to get ignorant at that point. I said, I am done. I'm done. Something has to be done to fix this. I can't live my life like this. This is not living. Every single day of my life, I'm worried about bleeding somewhere. And God loved my husband. A lot of men wouldn't have put up with this, because obviously it can put a strain on your sex life as well when you're dealing with these issues, because you're bleeding more than you're not. And a young guy in his 20s and early 30s, you know, they got some needs, ladies. They got their needs. And I love my husband to death because he put up with a lot for me regarding this. So my gynecologist handed me off to a different surgeon. She wasn't qualified to do the hysterectomy. We finally got the approval from the insurance company at that point. Oh, you've tried everything, so now we'll okay a hysterectomy. So now, again, I'm only 35. My great-grandmother died of ovarian cancer. The ovarian cancer spread all through her body. Again, she lived to be 88 till she died, but who knows how long she had it. She was from the generation, you didn't go to a gynecologist. You only ever left a man look down there when you were giving birth, and that was it. So it's such a taboo subject, and I don't understand why. Why is it so taboo to talk about women's reproductive health? It was so taboo back then. It's better now, but I know even there's people that would see that I did a video like this, and they're going to be like, how could she even talk about that? But it's a thing. It's a thing, and we need to address it. So I'm digressing. So age 35, the doctor decides that, well, you can get a hysterectomy one of two ways. You can get what they call vaginal hysterectomy, where they can go up through the vagina to remove everything, pull it out, call it a day. I should say one of three ways. Or you could get the laparoscopic hysterectomy, where they just make the tiny incisions and go in with, you know, cameras like that and do what they need to do. I didn't qualify for either. Besides not qualifying, which I didn't qualify due to how my pelvis was tilted, but they also wanted to view what was going on in there. This doctor had read all my past records and said, we want to take a look. So I was opened up hip bone to hip bone, filleted open. So I go through the surgery. Surgery goes great. He staples me back up again, so now I'm in like 30-some staples, and I'm sent home the same day. It was same day surgery. Or was I in? No, I was in one night for that. One night. And then I came home the next day. He took everything out but the ovaries. The ovaries are still in there. So the fallopian tubes are gone. The uterus is gone. He takes most of the cervix, but lets what he calls a stump. And that's an actual term, because the multiple doctors that I've gone through this after this, as soon as they'd ask me how much was left and I'd say a stump, they would know exactly what I was talking about. So I look at stumps as being trees. Apparently stump is a word in that community as well. Then they explained to me, when I went back for my follow-up, that no, they did not take the ovaries because of my age. To take the ovaries at that young age would have probably meant that I needed hormone replacement therapy. I also have an increased risk of breast cancer. My father's mother and both of his sisters, all three, had breast cancer. So I started my mammograms at a very early age 30, that I started getting those done. So when you add prolonged birth control pill usage and add hormone replacement therapy in there, then it elevates your risk of breast cancer for a normal person. Somebody who's already at increased risk prior to that, that's just like a Molotov cocktail waiting to go off. So he wanted to leave the ovaries because of that. But he got to see, when he was in there taking everything else out, that my ovaries were covered in cysts. So this was the official diagnosis of polycystic ovarian syndrome. Again, I fault myself a little bit here with the fact that I never took the time to, I saw my gynecologist every year. They didn't do blood workup. I didn't go to a regular doctor to get like a metabolic panel done every year. So I didn't know that my blood pressure was up, my cholesterol was up, and all this, and my insulin. The insulin was the key component here. So this surgeon that did the hysterectomy said, okay, you have ovaries full of cysts. I guarantee you have PCOS. You need to start following up with a different doctor to treat the rest of the issues. You need to get your insulin checked, and your androgen levels tested, hormone levels. So when I did that, it was definitely the PCOS diagnosis. My sugars were fine, perfect sugars. My insulin was insane. Insulin resistance, my body is now producing 3 times the amount of insulin as a normal person to keep those sugars in check. What happens if left untreated is the pancreas is what's producing the insulin. So now my pancreas is working 3 times as hard, which means my pancreas is going to wear out quicker, which then turns me into a diabetic at that point. So blood pressure was elevated, not anything huge. I was listed as more hypertensive. Cholesterol, not insane. Cholesterol shouldn't be over 200. Mine was running about 206 at that point. Same with the blood pressure. That bottom number needs to stay under 90. Mine was running right around 90. I don't remember what my insulin numbers were. I just remember the doctor saying it's 3 times what it should be. And as far as androgen levels go, my testosterone was, you'll have testosterone levels for a female and you'll have testosterone levels for a male. My testosterone levels were above what they should be for a female. They were sitting at the bottom end of the male spectrum. So that causes its own set of issues with, sometimes good, sometimes bad, excess facial hair growth. Now, I wasn't dealing with a lot of that, thank God. I think all women get the occasional hair that grows out the chin or whatever. All of women have a fine layer of peach fuzz on their face. I really didn't deal with a whole lot more than that. I would say I probably had more than average, and mine weren't the little white hairs that women get. These were like black. It was enough that I had to every day pay attention to what was going on the chin and the lip. But where the one plus, if you ask my husband, to having testosterone levels of a man is my sex drive was insane. It was insatiable. Like, I was the woman who wanted sex every single day, twice a day on weekends. It just was part of having the elevated testosterone, I guess. So I'm 35. I have ovaries covered in cysts, and all the rest of my parts are gone. So life gets good again for a while. And I have to think of the years now, because it was, okay, think, Michelle. This is menopause brain now. So, oh, speaking of the menopause then, even though my ovaries were left, they said there's a possibility that I'm going to be thrown into an early menopause by doing this. That definitely happened. By the time I hit 40, hot flashes, insane. I didn't end up dealing with the night sweats, but the mood swings and the hot flashes were just incredible. I remember standing outside in the middle of winter with my shirt off, just trying to cool my body down. It was horrible. So everything was cool until I started getting these horrible, horrible pains, like in 2015. Again, I didn't have to deal with a period anymore. I'd still go to the gynecologist every year because I would get a breast exam, and I'd still have to get a pap smear, again, for cervical cancer reasons. So I saw my gynecologist regularly, but 2015, I just started getting these horrible, horrible pains. So I said something to my gynecologist, and they were saying it's probably just these cysts that are on the ovaries. What they'll do is they're fluid filled. So they'll burst, they'll pop like bubbles, and then more will form, and then they'll pop like bubbles again, and more will form. And then that's just an ongoing thing. It's how it works. So they sent me for an ultrasound to see what this pain was that I was experiencing. And they discovered masses on these ovaries. They were no longer just cysts. They were masses, to the point where you couldn't see the ovaries anymore because they were bigger than the ovaries. They had swallowed my ovaries. So we scheduled surgery. This was the very end of 2015. They scheduled surgery for the beginning of 2016. And that was kind of around the time period. The end of 2015 is when I started YouTube. So, sorry, I had to switch camera batteries because all my babbling drained that one. So, where was I? Oh, away from the surgery, and I'm told that these tumors just kind of fell apart when he tried to put them in the bag. Hopefully, that takes care of everything. And they would send these, whatever, everything he collected automatically gets sent to a lab for biopsy. I have another cancer antigen test done. Oh, before I say that, but he also told me that my left ovary was actually grown fast to my bladder. So when he was removing everything from the left side, he got as much of the ovary as he could get. He literally shaved it, he said, because to get it all would mean putting a hole in my bladder. So I'm left with pieces of an ovary attached to my bladder. And that's when I hear for the first time that you're not out of the woods yet because ovaries can regenerate like a liver. I didn't know that was possible. Everybody that I say this to, their jaws drop because it's something we've never heard of before, that ovaries regenerate. I'm now to the point where I'm like, okay, God hates women. Why would he do that to us? Allow an ovary to grow back. So, this surgeon says, you know, hopefully it's not an issue. He says, if I got all the blood supply, you'll be fine. So that was the hope at that point. Did he get all of the blood supply? He couldn't tell. Even with the cameras in there, you just couldn't tell. It's in the middle of surgery. There's a lot happening down there. So, close my belly button back up, close my little incisions back up. I think I'm good to go. So like I said, that's the beginning of 2016. I'm good for about 3 years. 2019, my husband and I are actually on a little mini vacation in Ocean City, Maryland. And we're getting ready for dinner that Saturday night. And all of a sudden, I am hit with a pain on my left side, right where an ovary would be. It felt like a labor pain. It felt like someone was just squeezing everything in there. And it was coming and going like a labor pain. Like every 10 minutes, I would double over and was close to tears. Now, I take a lot of pain. I've been through a lot of surgeries in my life for multiple things. I can deal with a lot of pain. This was bringing tears to my eyes. We didn't know what to do. And I looked at him, I said, I know what this is. I said, that ovary is back. That ovary is back to torture me. So we left the beach the next morning, and I called the doctor right away, and they scheduled me for an ultrasound. So I go to the ultrasound. Now, this is the first time I got the feeling of where I was told that this isn't a thing. Ovaries can't grow back. You're crazy. So I didn't have an ultrasound tech to do the ultrasound. I had an actual doctor do an ultrasound. Still in the GYN department at Hershey Med. And he was the one that said, ovaries cannot grow back. And I told him this when I got there. I said, you know, I had this procedure done 3 years ago. I was told they couldn't get all the ovaries. The chance this ovary is going to grow back. And he looked at me like I had 3 heads. Again, this is a doctor. This isn't a tech. This is an actual doctor. So he sees all kinds of stuff going on in there. But sure enough, where that ovary is, there is blood supply. A lot of blood supply. So I was handed off to a different doctor. There is a doctor at Hershey Med. Gerald Harkins is his name. So if this is something that you suffer with, I encourage you to look him up. He has women that come from all over the country to see him to get this dealt with. So I'm handed off to this doctor, and he specializes in Ovarian Remnant syndrome. It's a thing. You can't get all this ovary because of one reason or another. Those little things go crazy. Now, did the ovary that grows back, it's non-functioning. It's not producing hormones. You're not going to get pregnant, if you still have all your other parts in there, that's not what it means by grow back. Like a liver grows back as a healthy liver and it still performs its function. These ovaries, when they grow back, are non-functioning, but they have enough of their original blood supply that they continue to grow. This ovary grew like a weed. It literally grew like a weed. We didn't know it at the time, how bad it got, until he got in there to look around. So obviously I'm looking at another surgery. He sees the original surgeon's notes on, you know, how he couldn't remove this from my bladder, or he was going to puncture my bladder. So I get scheduled for surgery. Again, we're talking 2019, 3 years after the first one. This by far, no, I shouldn't say by far. I don't know which was worse, this or the shoulder surgery. They rank right up there together. But this was, as far as female reproductive area surgeries, this last one was the worst I ever went through. He didn't know what he was getting into, and it shocked the hell out of him when he got in there. So again, mind you, I don't have anything left except a stump of a cervix, the vagina is still intact, and I have this partial ovary growing on a bladder. He went in laparoscopically, and so I got more little incisions, and he had to reopen the belly button. My belly button has been tortured. So I go through that surgery, I wake up, and that's when I get the full magnitude of what this little ovary had done. When it grows back, it doesn't grow back to look like an ovary. This tissue that just starts to grow was growing like a vine. So it went from the bladder, where it started, attached itself to that cervix and grew down into the vagina. So what they had to do, he was able to get it all off of my bladder. Again, 3 years makes a difference. A different doctor makes a difference. So he removed everything from the bladder. The stump of the cervix is gone, and I had to have vaginal reconstruction. He had to remove the back of the vagina. Now he explained that what that entailed was, and this is where this gets graphic, when he removed the back of the vagina, my bowels were then exposed through the vagina. So you could look at my vagina and see my colon at that point. In order to close that up, what was left of the vagina had to be pulled down, and around the back. So I basically got vaginal reconstruction and didn't have to pay for it because insurance companies aren't paying for that stuff. But I was, so this is a slap in the face of that insurance company that wouldn't take care of me earlier. Now y'all had to pay for vaginal reconstruction because you wouldn't fix me earlier. So my vagina is now smaller, which a vagina is, it's muscle. It will stretch and come back and stretch and come back. And when you have babies, it stretches out. And sometimes it doesn't always go back to the way that you were originally designed. So even to look at me from the outside, this is where my husband played a big part. By pushing age 50, and you know, I'm 49 when I'm having this done. Before I had this done, the vagina looked a certain way on the outside. I surely didn't look like any kind of a porn star, let me tell you. After this surgery and after all the swelling finally went down, I did. It was like a picture perfect specimen. But it also shortened me then on the inside. So what does that mean? Certain sexual positions are no longer comfortable because I can't handle the full length of my husband certain ways anymore. So I hope I'm done, because there literally is nothing left. In fact, there is nothing left. This doctor said, you don't even need to come back to see us anymore because there literally is nothing for us to look at. Unless you have a pain or something bleeds, I'm done. I don't need to see a gynecologist anymore because there's nothing left to look at. So I still do mammograms every year. I still have to do self-breast exams looking for problems. So I'm done at the gynecologist at this point. Healing from that surgery was absolutely brutal, just brutal. About 2 weeks after the surgery, You know, I'm up moving around, and I got up one day and I put a pair of pants on, and I noticed that they were tighter than what they were like before. It was a pair of pants that I was kind of wearing regularly to help me heal. It had a button on them. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, these same pair of pants were like way too tight. My stomach was growing. I was becoming distended. My abdomen was swelling. Now it looks like I'm pushing 6 months pregnant by supper time. So we call, the doctor says you need to get to the hospital right away. Hershey Med from where we live is about a 40-minute drive. Even the nurse on the phone said, this is stomach distension. This can be very bad. She said, you can have your husband start driving you, but she said if you, and I was hemorrhaging. Like, it was just running out of me. Blood was running out of me. She said, if you feel lightheaded or like you're going to pass out, she said, have your husband pull over and an ambulance will meet you. Otherwise, get up here to the hospital. And we made it to the hospital. They rushed me back into the ER, and just as they were starting to get me to, you know, take my clothes off and get in a gown, that button on my pants blew off my pants and flew across the where we were set up in the ER. So it's just curtains around you at that point. I wasn't in a room. I could have taken an eye out. I mean, it was that bad. So now we're looking. My husband described it as a scene off of one of these television shows. They called 2 doctors down from, my doctor wasn't available. They called 2 doctors down from the OB floor of the hospital. I'm in stirrups. I'm bawling. The pain is that severe. I also don't respond well to pain meds. I'm allergic to anything in the Percocet family for narcotics, so I can't take anything that's Oxy, Percocet, nothing like that. Vicodin does nothing. Dilaudid, if they double dose me, which is still safe. Normally they don't run you home with big prescriptions of Dilaudid. Normally Dilaudid is only given in a hospital setting. After surgeries, even after this horrendous shoulder surgery that I had done, I was sent home on Dilaudid. I was okay to double my dose. It would take the edge off. I just have pain receptors that don't respond to pain meds. So the pain from whatever was happening at that time was insane. So now I'm in stirrups. I've got 2 doctors staring up in my crotch. The bleeding had started to subside, so they were able to see a little bit of what was going on. Never found anything. I had a nurse on my right side. I had my husband behind my head, squeezing my left hand. I had 2 nurses over here. One was holding my arm so that I couldn't move, and the other one was shooting me with morphine straight in the veins, just to try to deal with this pain. So they never found out what happened, why all of a sudden I started to bleed so bad. Their only philosophy behind it was, at this point, it was like 2.5 weeks after the surgery, and swelling internally started to go down. So whatever was trapped up there as far as blood just came rushing out. Why the swelling in the stomach started becoming distended, we never found out why. And why that onslaught of pain, which when you're swelling down there, it's pushing against every other vital organ in your body, which is going to cause excruciating pain. So we got me settled, got me back home, and I healed after that. And I'm fine now. So like I said, that was 2019. This is now 2020. Knock on wood, everything is wonderful. So in a nutshell, how do I summarize this video? First of all, if you have a doctor that doesn't want to listen to you and doesn't want to take you seriously, you need to find another doctor. I don't care if it takes you 3, 4, 5 doctors. No woman should have to put up with, in today's world, with medical technology the way it is, no woman should have to put up with periods that last 2 weeks and only stop bleeding for 2 weeks. No woman should have to put up with that amount of pain all the time. Excuse me. Insulin resistant PCOS is treated with metformin. That's the #1 drug used to treat it. Metformin is also something they give to diabetics. It regulates blood sugar and insulin. Metformin is now being recalled due to cancer risks. I have another person in my family, now she's like a third cousin. I don't know that whole twice removed hoo-ha, but this woman's like 3 cousins away from me. She went into extreme kidney failure from excessive use of metformin for years and years. So, sorry, I had to switch camera batteries again. So that's how they treat the insulin resistance. This PCOS is part of what they call the metabolic syndrome, which is you carry excess weight, your insulin's insane, your blood pressure is normally up, your cholesterol is normally up, which then is nothing but a ton of chemicals being thrown into your body to try to fix all this kind of stuff. Since this surgery, and everything's gone, I quit the metformin, I quit the cholesterol medicine, I quit the high blood pressure medicine. Now I take nothing but my fish oil, my multivitamin for women over 50, and collagen for my hair, skin, and nails. So I have to watch. I still need to watch my cholesterol, my sodium, my sugar intake, because this is something that never goes away. There's no cure for PCOS. Even though I no longer have ovaries, I still have to classify myself as having metabolic syndrome and PCOS because it's something I lived with my entire life, and they say there's no cure. But you shouldn't have to suffer either. So I encourage you to keep changing doctors till you find one that listens to you. We don't have to suffer like this. I thank God for that doctor that finally took care of the ovarian remnant syndrome and took this seriously and finally healed me of this nightmare. Again, if you are suffering, his name is Gerald Harkins, Harkins. He is a surgeon at Penn State Hershey Medical Center in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Look him up. Like I said, he deals with women who come from all over the United States. My case has been written about anonymously in the journals of the American Medical Association, and hopefully this wakes the doctors up in this community that ovarian remnant syndrome is real. There are real people, there are faces to this syndrome, and I am one of them. But I am a survivor. I've recovered, and knock on wood, for a year. Everything's been great. So I'm going to end this video here. Thank you for hanging out with me. Feel free to message me with questions you may have. There's a lot, I mean, with the internet nowadays, and the internet wasn't a thing when I first started struggling with this back in the 80s. Now it's a thing. Just Google PCOS. See if you think this is something that you have. Look up ovarian remnant syndrome. You'll see the controversy around this diagnosis, how some people don't think it's real. So yes, I encourage all you ladies out there that if you are struggling to seek help or talk to me, I'm good with that. So again, ask me questions, whatever you'd like to do. Again, if you're new here, subscribe. I welcome you to hang out with our little YouTube family that I have here. I'm not huge. I'm not making any money off of this. It's not why I do it. I just like to hang out with other women my age and develop those bonds and friendships. And I'm also on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram. You'll see the who I am in the description box below this video. So I'm gonna wrap this up. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you in a future video. Bye.